She booked my lake mansion for 200 people. Without asking me, I came home from Helena expecting an empty road and a quiet evening at Caldwell Point. Instead, nearly 200 strangers were lined up outside my locked gate. Black SUVs, caterers, musicians, champagne, even valet attendants. A sign announced an HOA gala at my lake mansion. Denise Harper smiled and told me the association had already reserved my house lawn and private dock. Then she called the sheriff when I refused to open the gate. What she didn't know was that I had spent years working with land deals, deeds, surveys, and property lines. And when she proudly handed the sheriff the paperwork she claimed gave her authority over my land, I saw one sentence that changed everything. If you enjoy stories where patience, evidence, and a clear property line matter more than whoever talks the loudest, subscribe and stay with me, because that failed party was only the beginning. The first thing I noticed was the traffic. Caldwell Point sat at the end of a county road that normally saw more mule deer than sedans after 5 in the afternoon. That Saturday, I came back from Helena and found black SUVs backed up along the shoulder, pickups wedged into the grass, 2 catering trucks idling near the turn, and a shuttle van unloading people in cocktail dresses. For half a mile, strangers were walking toward my ranch. I slowed my truck, then I saw the sign. Silver Ridge Lakes Summer Gala Caldwell Point Lakefront Dinner, 6 o'clock p.m. My property name was printed beneath the HOA logo. Beyond it stood my iron and timber gate, closed. That was the only good thing I saw. A young valet in a black vest stepped in front of my pickup and raised one hand. "Sir, guest parking is back at the clubhouse. Vendors use the east shoulder. I live here." He checked the clipboard anyway. "Name? Ethan Caldwell." His finger moved down the page. "I don't see you." "That's because this is my house." He looked through the gate toward the stone and timber lake house half hidden among the pines. Then he looked back at me. Before he could answer, Denise Harper came through the crowd. She wore a cream-colored dress, low heels, and the calm expression of someone arriving to correct a minor inconvenience. "Ethan. Good. You're back. Why are 200 people outside my gate?" She glanced toward the line of vehicles, the annual gala. "We moved it here this year. The clubhouse lawn can't accommodate this many guests. You moved it to my ranch. The board approved the event. That wasn't my question." Her smile tightened. Behind her, catering workers were unloading racks of glassware. A string quartet stood beside instrument cases. Someone had stacked champagne boxes near my stone gatepost. Denise lowered her voice. "We sent notice. You had plenty of time to object. I never gave permission. Ethan, please don't do this here." "Do what?" "Create a scene." I looked at the people waiting to enter land they had apparently been told belonged to the evening. "You booked my house. We booked a community function. At my house. At Caldwell Point. My house has a name. That doesn't make it community property." The first edge entered her voice. "The association has already spent tens of thousands of dollars. Catering, valet, entertainment, rentals. Guests paid for tables. Some drove in from Bozeman. If you disrupt this now, the HOA will have to recover those losses somewhere, from whoever signed the contracts." Her eyes hardened. "Possibly from you." That was when the anger finally arrived. Not because strangers were standing outside my gate, because Denise spoke as if my refusal to surrender my own lawn had somehow created a debt. Caldwell Point was 190 acres of pasture, lodgepole pine, shoreline, and quiet. I had spent 4 years making that quiet livable after Claire died. The private dock below the house was the last project she and I had planned together. Denise knew enough about me to know I valued privacy. Apparently, she had mistaken that for weakness. I shut off the engine and stepped out. No one is entering. A few people nearby turned toward us. Denise flushed. "You cannot cancel an HOA event unilaterally. I'm not canceling anything. I'm keeping strangers off my property. This affects the entire community. My deed doesn't." She stared at me. Then she pulled out her phone. "Fine. Who are you calling?" "The sheriff." Several guests stopped pretending not to listen. Denise's confidence returned almost instantly. "We'll let Daniel settle it." I leaned against my truck. "That sounds reasonable." She hesitated, as if she had expected resistance. Then she made the call. While we waited, more vehicles arrived. The county road tightened into a parking lot. The caterer asked Denise twice when the gate would open. A man carrying a violin returned his case to the van. Nobody crossed the gate. Nobody touched the lock. 20 minutes later, a sheriff's cruiser came slowly through the traffic, gravel snapping beneath its tires. Sheriff Daniel Cross stepped out and surveyed the crowd before looking at Denise. "What happened?" Denise reached him first. "Thank God. Ethan is refusing access to an authorized HOA venue." Daniel looked at me. "Your place?" "Yes," he turned back to Denise. "Authorized by who? The association. Who owns the property?" Denise paused for half a second. Then she lifted a blue folder from beneath her clipboard. "We have contractual rights to use Caldwell Point." I watched her open it. She was smiling again, not the nervous smile of someone hoping the paperwork would help. The satisfied smile of someone who believed the argument was already over. Sheriff Cross held out his hand. "All right, show me." Denise pulled out several pages and placed them in his palm. "There," she said. "Everything is in writing." Looked at my closed gate, then at the champagne cases waiting beside it. Until that moment, I had assumed Denise Harper had simply become arrogant enough to confuse HOA authority with ownership. But arrogant people usually avoid putting lies on paper. Denise had brought hers with her, and whatever was inside that folder had made her confident enough to call the sheriff. Sheriff Cross read the first page without speaking. Traffic crawled behind him. Somewhere down the road, a driver leaned on a horn. Denise stood beside the cruiser with her arms folded, watching me instead of Daniel. Finally, he tapped the document. "This is an event contract." "Exactly," Denise said. "Signed and binding between Silver Ridge Lakes HOA and Mountain West Events. Megan Price handled everything. She can confirm it." Daniel kept reading. Then his eyes stopped. "Denise, who owns Caldwell Point?" She answered too quickly. "The association has use authority. That's not what I asked." Her jaw tightened. I stepped toward them. "May I see it?" Daniel handed me the contract. The first page listed the date, estimated attendance, 200 guests, and services covering catering, music, valet parking, temporary lighting, tables, and lakefront setup. Then I reached the venue section. Venue, Caldwell Point, Lake House and Grounds. Below it, venue owner, Silver Ridge, Lakes HOA. Authorized representative, Denise Harper, president. Her signature sat beneath the statement. For the moment, I forgot about the crowd. "You told them you owned my property," Denise shook her head. "That's contract language. It's ownership language. The HOA has long-standing community rights here. Show me one. We sent you notice." "Notice isn't an easement." Sheriff Cross looked at me. "You have your deed?" "Yes. I kept a certified copy in a document case behind the rear seat whenever I traveled between Caldwell Point and Helena. Old habit from development work. Land disputes become much shorter when somebody can stop arguing about what they remember and start reading what was recorded." Retrieved it. Daniel opened the certified deed across the hood of his cruiser. "Parcel number matches," he said. I pointed to the ownership line. "Fee simple. Ethan Caldwell," he read farther. "No recreational easement, no shared use provision, no event right. No HOA access across the residence, lawn, dock, or shoreline." Denise stepped closer. "Daniel, this is ridiculous. Everyone knows Caldwell Point is part of Silver Ridge Lakes." Daniel looked up. Being near an HOA and being owned by an HOA aren't the same thing. I'm the HOA president, and he's the property owner. That ended the first argument. Denise tried another. "You can't strand 200 guests on a public road." "I agree," Daniel said. Her expression brightened. Then he pointed toward the traffic. so you need to clear them. The change in her face was almost imperceptible. Almost. Within 10 minutes, the gala started coming apart. Megan Price, the event manager, arrived from one of the catering trucks and demanded an explanation. Denise pulled her aside, but their voices carried. You represented the venue as association property. It is effectively association controlled. That is not what you signed. Guests began asking for refunds. The quartet loaded its cases. Valets pulled temporary cones from the shoulder. A refrigeration truck reversed 50 yards before finding enough space to turn around. No one got through my gate. Denise stood in the middle of it, making calls faster than she could finish them. I felt satisfaction, but only briefly. Public embarrassment was not justice, and Denise was already looking for someone to blame. Sheriff Cross remained until the county road was passable. Before leaving, he handed Denise's contract back to me. You'll probably want a copy. I will. Denise reached for it. That belongs to the association. Daniel looked at her. It was presented as evidence supporting access to his property. He can photograph it. I photographed every page on the hood of his cruiser. Then something caught my attention, the signature page. Denise had executed the venue agreement on May 17th. I looked up. When did you say you notified me? She was busy closing her folder. Excuse me, the notice. You said I had plenty of time to object. What date did you send it? Sometime in June. Megan answered from behind her. June 21st. Denise turned. Megan was holding her tablet. You forwarded me the homeowner notification on June 21st. I remember because I asked why it hadn't been included in the original venue file. I looked back at the contract, May 17th, 5 weeks earlier. By the time Denise supposedly notified me, she had already booked the property, contracted vendors, and started selling seats. That meant my permission had never been part of her plan. By sunset, the last catering truck was gone. I opened the gate, drove through, and stopped on the other side. Denise remained on the county shoulder beside Mark Harper's white pickup, staring at me. I closed the gate. The latch dropped into place with one heavy click. For the first time all afternoon, Caldwell Point was quiet. But I kept thinking about those two dates, May the 17th to June 21. If Denise had committed 200 people, thousands of dollars, and the HOA's reputation before she ever claimed to notify me, then she had already decided my answer didn't matter. The question was no longer whether she had made a mistake. The question was what she had planned to do when I said no. Monday morning gave me part of the answer. At 8:12, an email from Silver Ridge Lakes HOA hit my inbox with the subject line, Notice of Community Damages, Caldwell Point. Event cancellation. The total demand was $41,086. Canceled catering, entertainment deposits, valet service, security, equipment rentals, guest refunds, administrative costs, and one line labeled reputational damage for $6,500, as if Denise had found a market rate for humiliation. The letter gave me 10 days to pay. After that, it warned, the board would consider escalating fines and all remedies available under association authority. I printed everything, not because I needed paper to understand the threat, because Denise had already shown me that she liked signing things. The invoice packet ran 19 pages. Most of it was exactly what I expected, until I reached a bill from Harper Outdoor Services, $8,940 description, lakefront event preparation, Caldwell Point. I read it twice. Mark's company had billed the HOA for trimming, irrigation checks, shoreline cleanup, decorative preparation, and ground staging at my ranch. But Mark had never crossed my gate. No one from his company had permission. No crew had worked my lawn. No truck had entered Caldwell Point. Yet the invoice had been approved for payment. Approved by Denise Harper. I leaned back in my chair. That changed the shape of the problem. If it had been only the gala, I could still believe arrogance had outrun common sense. But money had already moved. I went downstairs to the mudroom where I kept the fireproof document cabinet. The top drawer held deeds, title policies, old survey maps, easement agreements, tax records, and correspondence from the years when I still spent most of my time developing commercial property. Claire used to tease me about that cabinet. You trust paper more than people. Paper remembers, so do people, not under oath. She would roll her eyes and hand me coffee. The memory hit harder than I expected. Caldwell Point was the last place we had rebuilt together before cancer turned every calendar into appointments. The dock had been her idea. The stone terrace had been mine. She had chosen where the windows faced the water. After she died, I stopped taking new development deals. I came back here because it was the only place in my life that did not feel negotiated. Now Denise had put a price on it. Venue fee, event preparation, reputational damage. I closed my eyes for a moment, then I opened the drawer. Grief is dangerous when someone is trying to provoke you. It makes anger feel like action. I had learned better. I carried the files upstairs and cleared the kitchen table. First, the deed, then the title policy, then the old subdivision plat, then every piece of correspondence I had saved from Silver Ridge Lakes. The HOA had asked to use my dock before, 3 times in 5 years. I had declined every time, politely, in writing. One email from Denise 2 summers earlier read, "The lakefront at Caldwell Point would make a wonderful setting for our member appreciation dinner." My response, Caldwell Point is private property and is not available for HOA events or general community use. There was no ambiguity. I printed that too. At 10:05, I sent Rachel Kim, the HOA treasurer, a formal records request. Board minutes for the last 6 months, event budget approvals, vendor contracts, invoices related to the gala, payments to Harper Outdoor Services involving Caldwell Point or shoreline maintenance. At 10:31, Rachel replied, "Not with records." With one sentence, "Ethan, I need some time." That interested me. Rachel was cautious, but she was not careless. At 11:07, she sent another message. "You should know that not everyone on the board understood the gala was being held at your property." I read it once, then again. I called her. She did not answer. 5 minutes later, a PDF arrived. 1 page. It was an internal expense summary from the previous fiscal year. Harper Outdoor Services appeared on it repeatedly. Entrance landscaping, common area mowing, irrigation, trail maintenance, shoreline maintenance. The shoreline line item alone was far larger than I expected. I checked the location code attached to it. SARL West Access. That description bothered me. The west access sat near the narrow strip of land between the Silver Ridge Trail and the lake, a strip I had always assumed was outside my active ranch boundary because residents had used it for years. I pulled the old plat closer. The line was faint. I found my reading glasses. Then I saw it. The HOA boundary did not appear to reach the water. I traced the ink with one finger. Trail, common parcel, then a gap, then shoreline. My shoreline. I sat very still. Denise might not only have booked a party at a house she did not own, the HOA might have been spending money for years on land it never owned either. And if that line meant what I thought it meant, the failed gala was only the first problem Denise Harper had handed me. Rachel called at 7:20 Tuesday morning. "I can give you the minutes," she said. "But you didn't get them from me privately. You requested association records. I'm responding as treasurer. Understood. And Ethan?" "Yes." There was no vote on Caldwell Point. An hour later, 6 months of board minutes were in my inbox. The April meeting approved a summer gala budget not to exceed $42,000. The motion said nothing about a venue. May listed vendor deposits, nothing about Caldwell Point. June contained Denise's president's report. Venue arrangements finalized, no motion, no second, no vote. I called Rachel. "When did the board authorize my property?" It didn't. "Did Denise tell you where the gala would be?" She said she had secured a lakefront venue. You assumed the clubhouse? I assumed somewhere the HOA had authority to use. That distinction mattered. Denise had not only bypassed me, she had bypassed her own board. Before noon, Megan Price called. I heard you're requesting records. I am. I think you need something from mine. 20 minutes later, she forwarded an email chain from May. Megan had written, please provide property owner authorization before final site planning. Denise replied, the board has authority over community lakefront functions. The owner has been difficult before. Do not contact him directly. I will handle it. I read the message twice. Not I have permission, not Ethan agreed. The owner has been difficult before. Denise knew exactly who owned Caldwell Point, and she had deliberately prevented the vendor from asking me. I saved the email in 3 places. At 2 that afternoon, Tom Willis pulled into my driveway in an old Ford pickup. Tom had lived in Silver Ridge for 27 years and spent most of his career with the county road department. He came carrying a cardboard survey tube. Rachel told me what you were looking at, he said. She shouldn't have. She didn't. I asked her why Denise was yelling about old plats. He set the tube on my kitchen table. I remember that west shoreline before the kayak rack was there. He unrolled a county subdivision map dated years before the HOA existed in its current form. Silver Ridge owns this common parcel, Tom said, tapping the walking trail. Everybody knows that. His finger moved toward the water, then stopped. But it ends here. There was a narrow strip between the common parcel and the lake. I compared it to my deed. Same survey call, same boundary monument, same parcel number. How wide? About 60 feet at the access point. Wider farther north. And who owns it? Tom looked at me. You do. We drove down in my pickup. The HOA trail curved through pine and ended near a wooden kayak rack. Beyond it stood 2 picnic tables and a bench facing the lake. Residents had used the place so long it looked unquestionably communal. Tom stopped beside their kayak rack. This is roughly where the HOA line ends. I looked toward the water. 60 feet did not sound like much inside a courthouse. Standing there, it looked enormous. Every resident walking from the HOA trail to the lake crossed it. The picnic tables were on it. The bench was on it. Part of the kayak rack appeared to be on it. Harper Outdoor Services had been billing the association to maintain it. For years. Does Denise know? I asked. Tom gave a humorless laugh. She knows what everybody believes. That wasn't my question. His expression changed. I don't know. That was the problem. If Denise genuinely believed the HOA owned the strip, we had a boundary dispute. If she knew it belonged to Caldwell Point and kept spending HOA money on it anyway, we had something else. My phone rang before we reached the truck. Denise, I put it on speaker. Ethan, I understand you've been harassing board members for confidential records. I submitted a records request. You're creating unnecessary hostility. You billed me $41,000 because you caused losses. You also billed the HOA for work at Caldwell Point. Silence. Only 2 seconds. Enough. What exactly are you accusing us of? Nothing yet. You need to stop digging through old paperwork looking for technicalities. I looked at Tom. He had heard it too. Technicalities. Recorded property lines tend to become technicalities only when somebody needs them not to exist, Denise continued. The community has used that shoreline for decades. Whatever you're trying to manufacture, I suggest you think carefully before interfering with established lake access. There it was, not the gala, the shoreline. I kept my voice level, put that position in writing. Another silence, then the call ended. Tom stared toward the lake. You're going to tell the neighborhood? Not yet. Why? I rolled the old map and slid it carefully back into the tube, because Denise still had a choice. She could check the deed, admit the boundary, withdraw the demand, and stop. Or she could take a claim she could not prove and put it into an official record. I want to see, I said, how certain she is when her signature has to go underneath it. I got my answer 48 hours later. A certified envelope arrived Thursday morning from Silver Ridge Lakes HOA. Inside was a notice of lien amount, $75,000. I stood at my kitchen counter and read every line. Denise had taken the original $41,186 demand, added projected legal costs, administrative penalties, and what she called continuing damages, but the number was not what stopped me. The stated grounds were event interference and obstruction of community lake access. I read the second phrase again, community lake access. She had done it. Denise had taken the very boundary Tom and I had examined and converted her assumption into a recorded property claim. I called the county recorder. Has this been recorded? The clerk checked. Yesterday at 4:16 p.m. Who signed the filing? Denise Harper, President, Silver Ridge Lakes Homeowners Association. I thanked her and hung up. For a few seconds, the kitchen was completely quiet. Then anger came hard. A recorded lien was different from an angry email. It attached a dispute to title. It could interfere with financing, sale, insurance, anything that required clean ownership. Denise knew that. That was why she had chosen it. I grabbed my truck keys for about 10 seconds. I intended to drive straight to the clubhouse. Then I saw Claire's old coffee mug on the shelf beside the window. It had been sitting there for 4 years because I had never found a good reason to move it. And I remembered a negotiation 15 years earlier when a developer tried to bait me into an argument over access to a commercial parcel. I had come home furious. Claire listened until I finished. Then she said, "Never let somebody else choose the ground where you fight." At the time, I thought she meant negotiation strategy. Standing there with a $75,000 lien in my hand, I understood it differently. Denise wanted the clubhouse. She wanted raised voices. She wanted neighbors. She wanted me angry enough to become the man she had already begun describing. I put the keys down. Then I called a surveyor. His name was Paul Bennett. Licensed in Montana for 26 years. I had used him on 2 development projects before I left that business. I need a boundary retracement. How soon? Yesterday. He laughed once. Then I explained the deed, the old plat, the 60-foot strip, and the recorded lien. He stopped laughing. I can have a crew there Saturday. I want permanent reference points tied to the recorded monuments. You expecting a fight? I'm expecting someone to argue with stakes. Saturday morning, Paul's crew started at the southwest corner of Caldwell Point. They used the original legal description, county control points, and surviving monuments rather than neighborhood fences or landscaping. By noon, the line was becoming visible. Bright orange ribbon appeared beside lodgepole pine, then another stake near the walking trail, then one directly behind the HOA kayak rack. Residents began stopping. A man carrying a paddle stared at the ribbon. "What's this?" "Survey," I said. "Of what?" "My boundary." He looked toward the lake. "But this is HOA property. That's what we're checking." By 3, we weren't checking anymore. Paul walked toward me with his field tablet. "Your old map is right. How far from the HOA common parcel to the water?" 59.8 feet at the trail center line. Almost exactly what Tom remembered. The picnic bench was on Caldwell Point. Most of the kayak rack was on Caldwell Point. The path residents used to reach the water crossed Caldwell Point. The HOA owned the trail. It did not own the final 60 feet. Paul showed me the coordinates. "Want the preliminary?" "I want the signed survey when you're satisfied. You'll have it Monday." Across the trail, 3 residents were already photographing the stakes. By evening, the neighborhood group chat had exploded. "Why is Caldwell surveying the community waterfront? Is he putting up a fence? Can he block the lake?" Then Denise posted, "Residents should remain calm. The HOA has long-standing legal rights to the Silver Ridge waterfront and will defend community access against unilateral attempts to seize common property." I took a screenshot. She had now made the claim 3 ways, verbally, in a recorded lien, publicly. Monday morning, Paul returned with the signed survey. I was standing beside the kayak rack when he handed it to me. One of his new stakes rose from the ground 3 feet behind us, orange ribbon moving in the lake breeze. Across the trail, an elderly couple stopped and stared at it. then at me. The question on their faces was obvious. I didn't blame them. For 20 years, they had been told this was theirs. The survey said otherwise. I looked down at the certified boundary. Denise thought the lien had forced me backward. Instead, it had forced me to measure exactly what she was claiming. And now bright orange stakes were standing in the ground where her authority ended. By Tuesday morning, one of them was gone, not bent, not knocked over, gone. The stake behind the kayak rack had been pulled cleanly from the soil. Paul Bennett noticed it first. He called me from the trail. "Did you authorize anyone to remove a monument?" "No." Then somebody just created a bigger problem. I walked down with him. The hole was still visible, fresh dirt around the edge, a partial boot print beside it. Paul photographed everything before touching the ground. Then he replaced the stake from the recorded coordinates. "This isn't a fence post," he said. "You don't move survey markers because you don't like where they land." By noon, Denise had posted another message to the neighborhood group. "Unauthorized markers have been placed on established HOA common grounds. Residents should not be alarmed. The association is correcting the situation." I screenshotted it. At 5:40 the next morning, my security camera caught Mark Harper's white work truck stopping beside the trail. Two men got out. One wore a Harper Outdoor Services shirt. They walked directly to the replacement stake. One man grabbed it. The other looked toward Caldwell Point. Then they pulled it. I watched the footage twice. Mark never appeared on camera, but his company truck did. I called him. He answered on the fourth ring. "You sent a crew onto my land." "We removed a hazard, a licensed survey marker. It was obstructing community property. You have a survey? We have 20 years of use. That isn't what I asked." His voice hardened. "Ethan, you're trying to manufacture ownership where everybody knows the boundary has always been. I have a signed survey, and Denise has the HOA attorney looking at it." "Good. Tell him to call me." Mark hung up. Paul replaced the stake again that afternoon. This time I adjusted one of my existing cameras to cover the entire access strip. At 6:18 the following morning, Denise appeared. No crew, no truck, just Denise in walking shoes and a gray jacket, moving quickly down the trail. She stopped at the stake, looked toward my house, then pulled it out herself. She carried it 20 feet and laid it behind the HOA bench. The entire act took less than 40 seconds. I did not confront her. I sent the footage to Sheriff Daniel Cross. He called 15 minutes later. "You want to make a report?" "Yes. You want charges. I want the conduct documented and stopped." "That I can do." Daniel met me at the access point that afternoon. Denise arrived 10 minutes later with Mark. She came angry. "This is harassment," she said before Daniel finished greeting her. "He has cameras pointed at community property." Daniel looked at me. "Camera on your land?" "Yes," then back at Denise. "He can record his property. He's claiming everything is his." "No, the survey is claiming where his boundary is." Denise pointed toward the lake. "This has been community waterfront for decades." Daniel nodded toward Paul's replacement stake. "Then prove it. We have established use. Show me the recorded easement." She said nothing. "Show me a deed." "Nothing." "Show me a court order." Her face tightened. Daniel's voice stayed level until somebody produces one of those "do not move another survey monument." Mark stepped forward. "You're taking his side, I'm taking the side with documents." That sentence did more damage than shouting would have. Denise looked at me across the 60 feet she still insisted belonged to her HOA. For once, she had no clipboard, no contract, no lien notice, nothing in her hand. Just anger. She turned and walked back toward the clubhouse. That evening, the neighborhood email arrived. "Emergency community meeting save Silver Ridge Lake access Thursday, 7:00 p.m. The message accused me of attempting to seize historic community shoreline and threatened permanent closure of recreational access. Denise invited every household. Then she invited the gala guests. She wanted the room full. Tom called 10 minutes later. She's telling people you plan to fence the lake by Friday. I don't. She knows that. She hasn't asked. Rachel called after him. She's demanding the board support the lien and authorize legal action against you. Will they? I don't know anymore. That answer mattered. 2 weeks earlier, Denise could probably have counted the votes before entering the room. Now Rachel sounded uncertain. I spent Wednesday evening at my kitchen table, not preparing a speech, preparing sequence, board minutes, Megan's contract, the old plat, the new survey, Denise's lien, her group messages, and the email chain showing she had ordered vendors not to contact me. I placed everything into one thin black document case. Tom had expected boxes. Rachel expected an attorney. Denise probably expected anger. She was going to get none of them. At 6:35 Thursday evening, I parked outside the Silver Ridge clubhouse. The lot was already full. People stood along the steps, beside pickups, against the railings. Some were holding printed copies of Denise's email. Save our lake. Through the clubhouse windows, I could see nearly every chair occupied. Denise had wanted hundreds of angry residents in one room. I stepped out with the document case in my hand. For the first time since the gala, I smiled. Because she had finally gathered every person I needed to hear the same evidence at the same time. The clubhouse was packed. People lined the back wall. Folding chairs had been pulled from storage. Several of the gala guests stood near the entrance with their arms crossed, still angry about refunds and wasted travel. Denise sat at the center of the board table. Mark was behind her. Rachel sat 3 seats down, a yellow folder in front of her. Tom took a chair near the aisle. I sat in the front row with the black document case on my knees. At 7 sharp, Denise stood. She did not begin with the lien. She began with me. Silver Ridge Lakes is facing an unprecedented threat to community access. A few people nodded. She pointed toward a projected map showing the trail and shoreline. For decades, our residents have used this waterfront. Now one property owner is attempting to reinterpret old lines to seize land families have enjoyed for generations. Sus. That was the word she chose. She described me as wealthy, withdrawn, uncooperative, a man who had sabotaged the summer gala at the last minute. She said I was now trying to punish the entire neighborhood because I disliked HOA oversight. Then she held up a photograph of the orange survey stake. This is not about one dinner. This is about whether one man can close the lake to everyone else. The room tightened around that sentence. Denise knew exactly what she was doing. She had changed the question from, did the HOA trespass on Ethan Caldwell's property, to, will Ethan Caldwell take something away from you? Fear is useful when facts are inconvenient. When she finished, she looked toward me. Mr. Caldwell has asked to respond. I stood. No, not yet. Denise frowned. Rachel opened the yellow folder. I need to correct the record first. Every head turned. Denise's face changed. Rachel, this is not on the agenda. I'm the treasurer. These are board records. She held up the April minutes. The board approved a gala budget. We did not approve Caldwell Point as a venue. Murmurs spread through the room. Denise cut in. The venue was handled administratively. Rachel ignored her. There is no motion naming Caldwell Point. No vote. No authorization from this board. Then Megan Price stood from the second row. Denise looked genuinely surprised to see her. Megan held up a printed contract. My company handled the gala. She faced the room. We were told Silver Ridge Lakes HOA owned Caldwell Point. People started talking over one another. Megan raised her voice just enough. Denise Harper signed the contract that way. Denise stood. That was standard event language. Megan shook her head. I asked for owner authorization. She held up another page. And I was specifically told not to contact Ethan. Now the room went quieter. I opened my case. Denise looked at me. For the first time that night, she looked uncertain. I pulled out one sheet. I want to read one email. Denise immediately said, That correspondence is being taken out of context. I haven't read it yet." Nobody laughed. That made it worse. I looked down. May 20th. From Denise Harper to Mark Harper. Copied to Megan Price. Denise's shoulders stiffened. I read. "Ethan has refused community use before," a man near the back said. "What?" I continued. "Once everything is set up, he won't make 200 people leave." Silence. Not murmuring, not shifting chairs. Silence, the kind that arrives when an argument ends before anyone is ready for it to end. I looked up. Denise was staring at me. The email did what all the contracts, surveys, and arguments had not yet done. It removed mistake. It removed misunderstanding. It removed good faith. She had known I refused community use. She booked the gala anyway. She planned the crowd anyway. She expected 200 strangers, caterers, musicians, and valet attendants to become leverage against one homeowner standing at his own gate. Tom broke the silence. "You knew?" Denise turned toward him. "This is being distorted." A woman from the gala stood. "You told us the venue was approved." Another voice followed. "You told us Caldwell Point was association property." Then another. "My family drove 3 hours." Denise lifted both hands. "This is exactly what Ethan wants. He wants to divide the neighborhood so he can take away access." The sentence landed differently now, not as warning, as desperation. Rachel closed the yellow folder. "You filed a $75,000 lien after the sheriff told you the property was his. We have historic rights. Show them." Denise looked at the crowd, then at the map behind her, then back at me. "If Ethan insists that strip is private," she said, "then let him answer one simple question." Her voice grew stronger because she had finally found ground she thought could still save her. "Are you going to close it?" Nobody moved. "Are you going to fence off the trail and lock every Silver Ridge family away from the lake?" That was the question she wanted the room to remember. Not the false contract, not the secret plan, not the lien, the lake. Every face turned toward me. Denise sat down slowly. She had lost the facts. Now she was betting everything on fear. I looked around the room, then reached back into the document case. I had one more paper, and unlike everything Denise had filed so far, this one actually gave the neighborhood something. I unfolded it and placed it on the table. "This is a proposed pedestrian access license." Nobody spoke. Denise leaned forward. "A what?" "A written agreement allowing Silver Ridge residents to keep crossing the 60-foot strip to the lake." The room shifted, not loudly, just enough. I continued. "The survey says the strip belongs to Caldwell Point. I could close it tomorrow. I could move the kayak rack, remove the benches, post private property signs, and stop every person in this room from using that route." Denise seized on the first half. "You hear that?" "He admits it. I'm not finished." She stopped. "The license keeps the access open." That took the room away from her. I read the conditions. Silver Ridge Lakes HOA would acknowledge in writing that the 60-foot strip belonged to Caldwell Point. The kayak rack and picnic tables would be moved fully onto HOA property. No commercial events, no vehicles, no permanent structures, no claim of easement or ownership. And if the HOA ever filed another false property claim against Caldwell Point, the permission could be revoked. A man near the back raised his hand. "So we can still walk to the lake?" "Yes, with our kids." "Yes, launch kayaks? By foot?" "Yes." He looked at Denise. "Then why were we told he was closing it?" Denise answered before I could. "Because this is a trap. He can revoke it whenever he wants." "I can," I said. The room turned back to me. "Because it's private land. Permission means something only if the owner still has the right to say no." That sentence sat there. It was the entire dispute in one line. Denise had treated permission as weakness. I treated it as ownership. Rachel opened another folder. "I need to add something." Denise looked exhausted now. "Rachel, enough." "No." It was the first time I had heard Rachel say the word to her without qualification. She carried several spreadsheets to the front. I reviewed Harper Outdoor Services payments connected to the west shoreline. Mark stood from the wall. What does my company have to do with this? Rachel looked at him. $67,840 over 4 years. The room erupted. Mark pushed away from the wall. For maintenance. On whose property? Community property. Rachel pointed toward the certified survey beside me. Not according to this. Mark's face reddened. We maintained that area because residents use it. Rachel turned another page. Then why were several invoices coded as HOA-owned shoreline improvements? Mark did not answer. She kept going. Mulching, irrigation repairs, bench installation, trail edge grading, seasonal cleanup, all approved under Denise's signature. Denise snapped. Those services benefited the community. That isn't the question. Rachel's voice stayed calm. The question is why the HOA paid your husband's company to improve land the HOA did not own. For the first time that night, Mark looked at Denise instead of me. That look mattered. I had seen it in business disputes before. Two people can defend one story easily until money forces them to decide whether they are defending the same version. Tom stood. I move that Denise Harper be suspended as president pending an independent financial audit. A sharp breath moved through the room. Denise stared at him. You are not on the board, no, Tom said. But Rachel is. Rachel raised her hand. I make the motion. Another board member seconded it from the far end of the table. Denise turned toward the remaining directors. You cannot be serious. The vote happened one name at a time. Yes, yes, no, yes, abstain, yes. Denise voted no. It did not matter. The motion passed. She sat very still. 6 years of running meetings, controlling agendas, deciding what counted as community interest. And she had just lost control in less than 5 minutes. Nobody applauded. That was what made it heavier. There was no celebration, just chairs creaking, paper moving, people looking at Denise differently than they had when the meeting began. Rachel gathered the financial records. The audit starts immediately. Then she looked at me. What about the lien? I closed the document case. The board can withdraw its position. Denise spoke before anyone else. The lien is recorded. She sounded almost relieved to have found one remaining weapon. She's right, I said. Several people looked confused. I stood. A board vote tonight cannot erase a recorded claim against title. The county will not simply pretend it never happened. Tom frowned. So what does? A release signed by the association. Rachel nodded. And if Denise refuses, then a judge. The room went quiet again. Denise had lost the crowd. She had lost the board. She had lost the argument over the lake. But she had already pushed the dispute into a place where neighborhood votes no longer controlled the outcome. The next morning, I filed an action to clear title and challenge the lien. By lunch, Silver Ridge Lakes had been served. By evening, Denise had retained counsel. And for the first time since 200 people stood outside my gate, the fight was finally headed somewhere she could not control, with a microphone, a mailing list, or a room full of frightened neighbors. It was headed to court. Judge Elaine Mercer called the case 6 weeks later. By then, the cottonwoods around the county courthouse had started turning gold. I sat at the plaintiff's table with one binder. Across the aisle, Denise sat beside her attorney. Mark was behind them, shoulders rigid, staring at nothing. Rachel and Tom were in the gallery. So was Megan. The judge entered at 9. No wasted motion, no speech. Mr. Caldwell, you're asking this court to remove a $75,000 lien and determine whether Silver Ridge Lakes has any ownership or permanent access right across the disputed shoreline strip, yes, Your Honor. Denise's attorney stood. Our position is that the association has enjoyed open, continuous community use of that waterfront for decades. Residents relied on that access. The HOA maintained it, improved it, and treated it as part of the common recreational area in good faith. Judge Mercer looked at him over her glasses. Good faith does not answer title, he continued anyway. There is also long-standing custom. She raised one hand. Counsel, we'll get there. I opened the binder. Exhibit 1 was my certified deed. Fee simple ownership, no HOA easement, no shared use clause. Exhibit 2 was the original subdivision plat. The common parcel ended before the water. Exhibit 3 was Paul Bennett's signed survey, 59.8 feet from the center line of the HOA trail to the shoreline. Private property, Caldwell Point. Denise's lawyer attacked the survey first. People have used that path for 20 years, Judge Mercer leaned forward. Can custom transfer title? He paused. No, Your Honor. Can an HOA board create a permanent easement simply by using someone else's land? No. Did Mr. Caldwell ever sign one? No. The room went silent. 3 questions, 3 answers. The shoreline issue was almost over. Then we reached the lien. I handed up Denise's gala contract. Venue owner, Silver Ridge Lakes HOA. Judge Mercer read the line. Mrs. Harper signed this? Yes. Denise's attorney stood. She believed the association had broad community use authority. I gave the court Megan's email chain. The judge read Denise's words silently. The owner has been difficult before. Do not contact him directly. Then I gave her the May 20th email. Ethan has refused community use before. Once everything is set up, he won't make 200 people leave. Judge Mercer looked at Denise. For the first time all morning, Denise looked down. The judge turned to her attorney. Your good faith argument has a problem. He said nothing. She knew the owner had refused. Still nothing. She instructed vendors not to verify consent. Silence. And after the sheriff confirmed the property belonged to Mr. Caldwell, she later filed a lien asserting community access rights over the same land. Denise whispered something to her attorney. He shook his head. Then Rachel was called. She brought the audit. Under oath, she identified 4 years of Harper Outdoor Services invoices tied to the west shoreline. Total $67,140. Several invoices described the work as maintenance of HOA-owned shoreline. Others included bench installation, trail edge grading, cleanup, and irrigation repairs. Judge Mercer looked toward Mark. Who approved payment? Rachel answered. Denise Harper. Any recorded ownership review? No. Any easement? No. Any board resolution authorizing improvements on Caldwell Point property? No. Denise's attorney tried to recover. The work benefited residents regardless of technical ownership. Judge Mercer's expression changed. Not anger, something colder. Recorded ownership is not a technicality. Nobody moved. She stacked the deed, plat, survey, contract, email, lien, and audit in front of her. One continuous record, not one bad decision, a sequence. First, Denise claimed ownership she did not have. Then she blocked verification. Then she relied on 200 guests as pressure. Then she asserted shoreline rights after being shown the deed. Then she filed the lien. And underneath it all, her husband's company had been paid tens of thousands of dollars to maintain the disputed land. Judge Mercer closed the audit. I have enough on title and the validity of the lien. Denise looked up sharply. The judge continued. The remaining question is whether the conduct reflected mere association error or intentional retaliation sufficient to support personal liability. That changed the room. Until then, the HOA had been the shield. Now Denise and Mark were standing behind it while the judge decided whether to remove it. She called a recess. 30 minutes. I stepped into the hallway. Tom came over first. Think she voids it? Yes. What about Denise? I looked through the courtroom doors. Denise was sitting alone at the defense table while her attorney spoke quietly with Mark. I don't know. And for once I meant it. The evidence had gotten us here. The law had drawn the line. But the next part belonged to Judge Mercer. 30 minutes later, the bailiff opened the doors. All rise. Judge Mercer returned with several pages in her hand. She sat down. The room followed. Then she looked directly at Denise Harper. The lien is void." No one moved. Judge Mercer continued. "Silver Ridge Lakes HOA has no ownership interest in Caldwell Point, no permanent easement across the disputed shoreline strip, and no authority to impose a lien based on Mr. Caldwell's refusal to surrender private property for an association event." Denise stared at the table. The judge turned one page. The documentary record also shows that Mrs. Harper knew Mr. Caldwell had previously refused community use, instructed vendors not to contact him directly, presented the HOA as owner of his property, and later filed the lien after law enforcement confirmed otherwise. Denise's attorney stood. "Your Honor." "Sit down, counsel." He did. Judge Mercer looked back at Denise. "That sequence is not administrative confusion." The silence in the room sharpened. "It is knowing overreach." She ordered the lien released immediately and awarded me documented damages, survey costs, filing expenses, and legal costs connected to clearing title. Then came the part Denise had been waiting for. "The intentional retaliation claims against Mrs. Harper personally will proceed. The court will not allow an HOA office to function as a shield for conduct undertaken with knowledge that the association lacked the authority asserted." Mark shifted behind her. Judge Mercer glanced toward the audit. "The financial questions involving Harper Outdoor Services are also sufficiently serious to remain outside this ruling and may be referred for further review." That was all. No dramatic speech, no lecture about power, just a line drawn in law where the survey had already drawn one in the ground. The gavel came down. Outside the courtroom, Denise walked past me without speaking. Mark followed. Neither looked back. Rachel stopped beside me. "I'm going to call an emergency board session for the audit and her resignation. You think she'll resign?" Rachel looked toward the courthouse doors. "She already knows she's finished." She was right. Denise resigned 2 days later. Harper Outdoor Services lost every Silver Ridge contract before the end of the month. The outside audit was referred for further review after more questionable billing appeared. I stayed out of that process. My fight had never been about destroying Mark's business or chasing Denise through every consequence. It was about Caldwell Point. The county recorder released the lien. The title was clean again. More importantly, the new board accepted the pedestrian access agreement almost exactly as I had written it. They acknowledged my ownership. The kayak rack was moved back onto HOA land. The picnic tables followed. No commercial events, no vehicles, no permanent structures on my side. Residents could still walk across the 60 feet to reach the lake because I chose to allow it. That distinction mattered. By early autumn, the orange survey ribbons were gone. They were no longer necessary. The line existed whether anyone could see it or not. One Saturday afternoon, I opened the gate for 6 vehicles. Tom and his wife came first. Rachel arrived with her family. Megan brought dessert. Sheriff Cross stopped by after his shift, still in uniform, and refused beer because he was driving. We grilled beside the house. Kids ran between the lawn and the dock. Someone laughed near the boathouse. For a while I stood alone at the edge of the terrace looking toward the lake. Claire should have been there. That thought still came sometimes. It no longer broke the day in half. The house had been quiet for so long after she died that I had started confusing silence with safety. Denise had tried to take that silence from me by force. What surprised me was that the answer had not been to close everything tighter. It had been to choose who came through. Near sunset, Tom walked with me back toward the gate. One truck had just arrived late. After that, the county road was empty. Tom looked through the open entrance. "You want me to leave it open in case anyone else shows up?" I looked back toward the ranch. Rachel's children were running down toward the dock. Megan was arguing with Sheriff Cross about whether huckleberry pie counted as dinner. Tom's wife was carrying plates onto the terrace. The lake beyond them was flat and silver. No, I said. Tom looked at me. "Everyone I invited is already here." I swung the gate shut. The iron frame moved slowly between the stone posts. Then the latch dropped with one heavy click. Months earlier, Denise Harper had stood outside that same gate believing 200 people, enough money, and an HOA title could turn my refusal into permission. She had been wrong about the house, wrong about the shoreline, wrong about the lien, and in the end, the law did not punish her because she was loud, arrogant, or disliked. It punished the claim she could not prove. I walked back toward the lake. Behind me, the gate stayed closed, not because I was afraid of who might come through, because for the first time in a long time, I had remembered exactly what ownership meant, the right to protect a boundary, and the right, when you choose, to open it.
That may be the most important lessons it can carry away from Caldwell Point. Standing your ground doesn't always mean raising your voice or shutting everyone out. Sometimes it means keeping the dish, reading the firing, documenting what happened, and refusing to let somebody else's confidence become a substitute for your consent. Ethan could have closed that 60-foot strip forever. Instead, once his ownership was repeated, he found a lawful way to let his neighbor keep reaching the lake. There's a quiet kind of trend in that a property line master, but so does what you choose to do once that line is repeated. Ethan protected the place he and Claire had built together without becoming the kind of person who needed control over everyone else. In the end, his break could be closed because it belonged to him and open for exactly the same reason. If you believe Ethan handled it the right way, type yes in the comments. And if you ever deal with an HOA, a boundary dispute, or simply had to stand calmly behind something you knew was right, share your experience below. A lot of first reading may recognize more of this story than you think. And if story about land, ranches, HOAs, and ordinary people standing firm with faith and patience are your kind of story, subscribe and stay with us. They are lending more boundary, and the people who defend them quietly still worth talking about.